Is this about the Hollywood shit and video games? It's crazy. All right, I'm watching.
Please tell me that you guys understand where I'm coming from with this. I
Just a moment.
am sick and tired of the video games industry so desperately and so pathetically trying to be like Hollywood. Oh,
exactly
do they want to be a part of that crowd? And everybody can see it at this point. I think that anybody with eyeballs can look at any AAA game in the industry and say, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. They can pretend like that's not what's happening. They can say that's not what's happening, but we can all see it. Constantly following the exact same themes, using the same casting habits, bringing in these prestigious voice casts that just so happen to be filled with Hollywood voice actors, modernizing old stories, and
yeah, they want to buy their way into popularity. They want to be like the cool kids in Hollywood and movies and TV shows, except for they're a bunch of loser nerds that make video games, and nobody would even accept their college project, their high school play. And so now they have to turn it into a video game and pay some Hollywood actor to pretend like they're famous. It's embarrassing.
Characters so that they can fit a modern audience that everybody seemingly doesn't believe actually exists. Theater kid level writing and self-insert, setting hundreds of millions of dollars on fire to be able to make these games look that much more cinematic and much more realistic. And all it's done is led to games feeling more cheap than they ever have while costing more than they ever have. And that's the conundrum. That's the problem that I'm having right now. That's the core issue here, because where did it all go wrong? How did it go so wrong? How did an industry that absolutely farmed us now lack the ability to be able to make a profitable or popular game anymore? Half of these guys are just a joke.
It's because it's different people. That's the reason why. You have people that are getting inside of video games and they're not doing it because they like video games anymore. And the reason, I think it's also DEI hiring. I think whenever you hire a bunch of art hoes instead of a bunch of fat nerds, you're going to have shitty video games.
And then it dawned on me. They are desperate for the approval of an industry that doesn't even think they exist. They're not even on their radar. Meanwhile, they're making games, they're making products for an audience that doesn't even want it. And in trying to follow Hollywood's footsteps, they haven't taken the time to realize that the amount of time that it takes to make a game is what's making their results so much worse. So today, I want to talk about the games industry's obsession with Hollywood, how chasing a failing industry only also then leads to failure, and how in mimicking Hollywood's formula, they haven't realized that time matters more than it ever has. And these guys are running out. I don't think I fully understood how deep the obsession with Hollywood had gotten until I had seen the reveal for God of War Lawfare. Now, I already had a lot of problems with what they had shown. You guys already know most of that. The painfully millennial, ironic writing, the spin-off into a female lead, the cast filled with Hollywood voice actors. All of it just felt like the exact same direction modern Hollywood has been taking their franchises for years. But the thing that got me was seeing Jack Quaid wearing this stupid PVC pipe box while doing motion capture for a fucking cube, while the chick who was playing the ribbons on a sword stood there holding a little box on a stick. And I just sat there thinking, why is this necessary? Why are these people even here? This is all just so damn wasteful. They're probably spending tens of thousands of dollars an hour on those actors, the set.
What's crazy is that, like, I can look at this game, and this looks like a game that got generated by Grok. I don't know about you guys, but, like, if I look at this, like, nothing about this looks appealing at all.
And all the equipment that's surrounding them.
Totally
then
AI
I ended
generated.
up finding this interview with Games Radar where the director Ariel Lawrence explained that while the box helped them properly space out their scenes, it was not actually required. Apparently, it was just a lot of fun. And that is just so self-indulgent. None of this is necessary. They have the money to spend, so why not spend it? It gives them more time with the actors, brings them closer to the Hollywood production process, and it validates their desire to feel like they're directing a movie rather than making a video game, which that's already a problem in and of itself. This industry is not spending all of this money because the game itself demands it or that the players need it. They're spending this money because playing Hollywood makes them feel important.
Yeah, they want to buy their way into the prestige and celebrity of Hollywood and the music industry and TV. That's what they want to do. It's obvious they want to do that. That's the reason why they keep doing all of these, like, meet the developers and talking about the developers and having the developers on the camera. Like, you know, it's really kind of funny because I think about it. I don't think I've ever really even watched an interview with Miyazaki, the guy that made Elden Ring. I don't even know what he talks like. I don't even know what he says. Like, I have no idea. I have no clue whatsoever.
I think that need to feel important comes from an insecurity that this games industry has carried for a very long time. Back in 2012, Roger Ebert published an article titled Video Games Can Never Be Art. It was written in response to a TED Talk from Kelly Santiago, who argued that video games had already crossed the line into artistic expression. Ebert disagreed. His position was that video games cannot be art because they fundamentally have the structure of a game, which makes art impossible. Video games have goals. Art does not. That was his entire point. Now, he was wrong.
Art does have goals. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's so stupid and it's so reductive. Like, what do you mean? How can you say that art doesn't have goals when, like, 95% of the art that was made before, like, maybe like 500 to 1,000 years ago was all patronized and, commissioned by people who said, you need to make a statue of me that looks really good out of marble. Like, how can you even say that? Like, you're so stupid to say that. The overwhelming majority of art that's looked at as, like, you know, the premier, you know, pinnacle Renaissance paintings and shit like this was all commissioned and patronized by nobles, rich people, and other, you know, state actors. Like, it's not even true.
Of course. And I mean, in my eyes, I think that video games are like the pinnacle of art, crystallizing the essence of nearly...
I'm so sick of having to listen to the opinions of Goyim. I really am. I'm so sick of it. It's making me so angry.
Every single medium into one experience: painting, drawing, acting, music, writing, everything.
I'm
Beyond
becoming
that,
more Jewish
his entire argument was judging games according to what movies could do, despite the fact that he had barely even played any games himself.
So sick of this.
The industry, and honestly anybody in their right mind, should have just rejected all of this. It was a film critic talking about an industry that he's not involved in and a medium that he has no experience with. But instead, that article had set off years of arguments, responses, lectures.
Yeah, and do you know who never needed to fight back against that? Is people like Kojima. It's people like Miyazaki. It's people like, like the guys that work at Nintendo, like Iwata, Shigeru Miyamoto, like all the other guys, right? Like, they never needed to fight back against this because they just make the fucking game. And if people like it, then it's art, and that's all that matters. It's all of these Western people and these fucking retards that are begging for everybody's approval. That's what's... It's the approval, like, seeking that's just so... So basically only Asian devs... I do think that I think that Korea and Japan and China have a much better culture around. Maybe it's just different. I think it's probably the real answer to me is it's different. I don't really understand Chinese, Korean, or Japanese culture. I've never been there. I don't speak their language. I'm just speaking as an outsider. But it sure seems like, at least as an outsider, they don't have the same obsession with being perceived in a certain way. And to the extent that they do, I certainly don't see it as an American.
Kinds of different things coming from developers and critics that were desperate to prove that video games deserve to stand beside Hollywood. But the one thing in his article that ended up being right and ended up coming true was right at the end, where he said, do they require validation in defending gaming against parents, spouses, children, partners, coworkers, or other critics? Do they want to be able to look up from the screen and explain, I am studying a great form of art? Then let them say it, if it makes them happy.
Isn't it crazy how many people's lives are completely built around the approval of another person? It's so pathetic, bro.
This guy was an asshole, but he was absolutely right. They did require validation.
My favorite.
And the craziest part is that these guys are chasing validation from an industry that people like me have almost completely stopped caring about. I don't know about you guys, but I flat out just do not watch much of anything coming out of Hollywood anymore. The only television I watch is anime that I want to keep up with, old favorites like Battlestar Galactica, Fringe, and Supernatural, and that's about it. For movies, Man, the last time that I went to the theater was to go see the extended Lord of the Rings anniversary run. Before that, I think I saw Project Hail Mary on a whim, which was great, by the way. But, before that, it'd probably been 8 years or more. I like campy science fiction, dude bro comedies, low substance action movies, and high fantasy.
Same. My dad and I went to Redbox every weekend, and we rented the new Jason Statham It's Just One Last Job, but I'm retired. You've got to do it. They have Sarah. Okay, all right, one last job. Like, I've watched probably like 40 of those movies, man.
Where it feels like I am the target audience. But over the last decade, Hollywood has deliberately moved away from guys like me in favor of re-releasing the same properties or virtue signaling for the sake of vanity. Everything has to rewrite old narratives, criticize how things are written or cast in the past, or inject modern social politics into it. That might appeal to some people, but for me, I'm just going to tell you guys, it just does absolutely nothing for me.
He's playing on easy
video
mode.
games have been following that exact same trend. They've increasingly moved away from guys like me, taking a socially safer approach to most games that they put out. They've bent over backwards to try not to offend anybody. They've softened their language, limited their gameplay, put more female leads into historically male roles, and somehow have allowed the writing to get worse through all of it. Now, I think this is where some of our opinions might diverge a little bit. You guys are welcome to have your own opinions, but I think a lot of people have treated this like it was the natural result of changing social trends, politics, and investor influence. But I've come to realize that I don't think it's as shadowy or nefarious as a lot.
I think that for a while it was investor influence. As somebody who has a little bit of familiarity with this, the amount of money that guys were willing to spend on gaming studios back like maybe 5 years ago is a lot higher than it is now, at least from like my perception. But the difference is that you have other people that are inside of the gaming industry that have kind of picked up a little bit of that slack. But what's happened is that a lot of the guys, if you're running a $600 million investment fund, you have expectations, right? Like, you can't just invest all your money into garbage. How are they still doing it when they keep losing money? Well, it's because different people think that they're going to do it the right way. And there are games like Ghosts of Yotai, for example, that was a successful game. I think it was financially successful. And even I don't know if Avowed was financially successful or not, but I think it was probably pretty close to it, at least, because Obsidian and Sucker Punch worked at a much lower budget. And so if you want to make a woke trash video game, you can do that, but you can't expect it to be a blockbuster. That's the difference.
People make it sound, because I think it's a lot more intentional.
That's what
because these changes are going far beyond just the characters and tone. It's the games themselves.
ESG investing is drying up. Well, here's the problem with ESG investing, okay? And I'm going to simply apply logic to this and just, try to bear with me. Think about the games that get ESG investing. These are video games that were not able to get investing based off of their content. There were video games that were not able to get investment based off of their their clientele, or they were not able to get investment based off of who's working at the studio. They weren't able to get investment based off of networking. So any video game and any piece of media that is being funded by ESG money, you have to assume is being funded by ESG money, because it can't be funded by any of these other things that would make more logical sense, because the investment isn't sound. So you're going to have a selection bias of ESG funded video games that are going to be worse on average because they're selected by being excluded from every other investment criteria before this. You see what I'm saying? How this happens?
That have changed. It's the entire industry that's surrounding it. AAA games have become increasingly more Hollywood coded across the board. More Hollywood actors being cast in video game characters.
Environmental social governance. That's what ESG stands for. I'm going to go back 5 seconds. Sorry about
Hollywood coded across the board. More Hollywood actors being cast as video game characters. More video game adaptations in movies and television. The industry now has dozens of award shows that have almost nothing to do with the audience, and they're increasingly just feeling like exercises in self-congratulation. You have the Game Awards, DICE, BAFTA, the Golden Joysticks, and about a dozen more on top of that. And at the same time, these studios are pushing harder into fidelity and realism. Writing has become more self-serious and dramatic rather than immersive. Gameplay is taking a back seat. And the entire industry is becoming more expensive, more disconnected from its audience, and honestly, just a lot more self-indulgent. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that games should never be cinematic, or that Hollywood actors automatically make them worse. Hell, some of the best voice actors in the industry have been Hollywood actors in some cases.
I think the reality is that 99.9% of guys don't have it. They just don't have it. There's not that many Kojimas out there. There's not a lot of Christopher Nolans out there. Let's assume the Odyssey didn't happen, right? There's not a lot of, like Michael Bay's. Most people don't have it. And these people think that they can emulate it by copying it. You can't do that.
Video games have borrowed from movies for decades. Metal Gear Solid, Mass Effect, Red Dead Redemption, and plenty of other games are deeply cinematic, but they still understood that they were just video games.
Exactly.
The cinematics serve the experience. The story served the experience. Increasingly, it feels like gameplay is what developers are reluctantly building between the scenes that they actually care about. I think you can see this most clearly with their obsession with hyperrealism. Studios spending hundreds of millions of dollars scanning actors, capturing every movement, animating every facial twitch, and recreating reality down to the pores on someone's face, only for those games to look almost exactly like every other AAA game that is chasing the exact same thing. Hyperrealism.
The problem, not only that, is that you also hit diminishing returns. Where, like, whenever you already are at, like, 90% or 95% fidelity and it looks really good, like, let's say something like, what's at 95%? Probably, like, I don't know, Detroit Become Human, like, I'm trying to think another game that's like that. Maybe Metal Gear Solid 5, something like that. Like, to go from 95 to 99, like Witcher 3, yeah, sure. To go from 95 to 99 probably costs as much money as it takes to go from 0 to 95. So the problem is that, like, you're investing in, like, this next generation level quality to do something like Senua's Saga or, God of War Laufey or, Death Stranding 2. And, like, yeah, Death Stranding 2, I think it makes sense that they did that. But many of these other games, it really doesn't.
It's become the most expensive way possible to look like everyone else because nearly every AAA studio is doing this now. The only real visual distinction between any of these games in this era anymore is where they're taking place in, or it's the personal politics of the studio behind them. Western developers are purposefully making women less attractive and more masculine, and Eastern developers are leaning further into beauty and aesthetics. And every step closer to reality requires more people, more specialized roles, more advanced technology, more equipment, and more time. It's why we have watched studios balloon in size to hundreds or even thousands of developers at this point. It's making the games more expensive, but it's not automatically making them more memorable or more immersive or more fun in most cases. Meanwhile, the games with the strongest art direction, many of them being indie games, can remain recognizable and distinct for decades without ever trying to recreate a real world. Notice how those games are the ones that are succeeding the most right now. When every single release needs Hollywood actors, full performance capture, photorealistic graphics, and hours of movie-quality cinematics, the industry is not just borrowing Hollywood's creative habits anymore, they're adopting Hollywood's cost structures. The difference is that Hollywood can make a movie in a year or two. Video games take 7 or 8.
Yeah, really.
If you guys are wondering where some of this money has been going, why AAA games now on average cost over $300 million to make, this is why. This is where it's coming from. It's wastefulness, it's gluttony, it's self-indulgence. And while some of that stuff is fine, I think that the act of making a game should be fun.
I think it's always like everything is always judged by its outcome. And the result is that a game like, for example, Death Stranding or Death Stranding 2 does everything that he's criticizing, but everybody says that this is a cool game. Like, I mean, I know it's kind of a polarizing game, but people recognize it as as an accomplishment, right? And so it's not even really about doing it. Like, the process doesn't really matter. Like, there's a lot of pixel art games that are garbage, and there's a lot of AAA games that look like they're photorealistic that are also garbage. The thing that really matters is, like, are you doing something that works, and are you working with people that have proven success? And I think at the end of the day, you can't just emulate somebody else's success. Death Stranding 2, Death Stranding 2 didn't flop. Exactly.
And these people should be able to enjoy it at least a little bit and have a bit of freedom when it comes to it. In a lot of cases, these guys are taking advantage of these companies. They're taking them to the bank. They're treating that check like it's blank. and they are using it to fund their fantasy of playing Hollywood.
Yeah.
That's what's been going on with some of these guys.
I love this. Exactly.
They're not even paying attention to trying to actually make a video game in some cases. Like, how do these companies not realize how much of a problem it is when you have a director for one of your games that's going out talking about how it's not even necessary for them to have 3 Hollywood actors in a motion capture set that costs God knows how much, those actors who cost God knows how much, doing motion capture with a team that costs God knows how much, and they're doing motion capture for a cube and a ribbon. It's so wasteful, especially for a spin-off. This isn't even a mainline title. You know, recently I read this article that was talking about how expensive games have been made over the last few years. Like how much more expensive games are today. And one of the reasons that they had brought up is that the biggest difference between today and how games were made in the past is that there are so many more specialized roles than there have ever been. And that's one of the targets for a lot of the layoffs that we have seen recently. It's not a bunch of guys that are wearing a bunch of different hats that can do a bunch of different things. No, instead, something as simple as just creating a character for a game now requires you to have a creative director, and then you have to have a concept artist, and then you need a VFX artist and a 3D modeler, and then you need somebody to rig that model. Then you need an engineer to be able to put it in the game, and then you need a voice actor. But if that voice actor is going to be doing motion capture, now there's entirely different teams that are going to be attached to that, and you have just this ever-growing mountain of people. Go ahead and throw some consultancy agency on there for sensitivity and diversity, and the next thing that you know, well, you have this massive...
There's 15 people that are assigned to creating one character in a video game. Meanwhile, Kojima was like, so Solid Snake. Well, I was watching this movie, it was called Escape from New York. It was really good. So I was thinking we do a guy like that. Well, what was the guy's name in the movie? His name is Snake. Okay, well, what do you want to call the guy in your game? Snake. Okay. All right, that was easy. So, problem solved.
Mountain of people that a single idea needs to go through, and all of those people are getting paid all the way down.
Got it. Boy, did it work. Yeah.
All of this is not only adding to how much these games cost to make, but it's also adding into how long these games take to make. And, you know, rewind the clock 15 years ago, games were only taking about a year or two to be able to release. Now that kind of timeline is basically reserved for AA games and live service games.
The good ones.
AAA, no chance. These games are going to take way too long to make. And
17 years.
I don't think that these guys have come to realize yet that expense is definitely killing these companies, but the thing that's really ruining them right now is time. Because time waits for no one, and it's definitely not waiting for these games. I don't know about you guys, but I have been completely locked into Pal World. I just cannot peel myself away from this game. And after watching it reach absurd levels of success twice now, I started to reflect on what makes this game different. The game is not even a live service, yet it is averaging over like 800,000 players during the week. And
there's a lot of shit to do in the game. That's the reason why.
Honestly insane. This is the kind of success that every AAA publisher wishes it could find. These are numbers that they try to budget their games around, only to release those games and have them fall flat on their faces. So I kept thinking about...
I do have feedback. I think that they should... The hard mode bosses are way too hard compared to the last boss. And I think that they should maybe introduce 3 difficulty modes and have a middle mode that gets players ready for the most capstone challenge fights. Because I just think that it's a big jump, right? And I feel like whenever you add in a really big jump in difficulty, you lose a lot of people in the process. Just get good. Well, I was just saying, basically, I think that you have an easy mode and you have a hard mode. I think that you should have a little bit in the middle as a medium mode, right? It's my opinion.
Pal World is doing that the wider industry is not right now, and one of the biggest things that I kept coming back to is that this game only took 3 years to develop. That used to be normal. Through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, a game could take a year or less to make. As 3D graphics came into the picture, well, it got a little bit more complicated, and development roles expanded. That then grew to 2 or 3 years of production. Studios then placed more emphasis on cinematic quality, wider scopes, and larger narratives, and AAA development expanded to 4, 5, 6, 7 years at this point. Much of that additional time was not necessarily spent on making the gameplay better, but instead making it look more expensive. Now, speed isn't everything. You can make a game in a day if you wanted to. That doesn't mean that game's going to be any good, but speed does matter when it comes to relevance. Palworld burst onto the scene in 2024 after roughly a year in development, and then, while it was still fresh in people's minds and the audience was still waiting for it, the game then dropped its 1.0 full release 2 years later, and it exploded. If they waited a little bit longer, or maybe another couple of years, who knows how big that audience actually would have been. But I actually still think that game would have been fine, because I think there's another kind of relevance that matters even more, and that's cultural relevance. Palworld probably could have released at any point they wanted to, because Pokemon is seemingly immortal. It has always been near the top of the charts. It has an active global fan base that has embedded itself into popular culture for decades now.
Know how.
Creature collecting itself is kind of a timeless concept. Palworld, by extension, is kind of a timeless concept. The same cannot be said for many of the trends that AAA games are chasing, especially the trends that they're borrowing from Hollywood. What was the last time that you watched a timeless movie that came out of Hollywood? Oppenheimer, maybe?
Last timeless movie that came out of Hollywood, Oppenheimer's probably a good example. I'm trying to think if there's a better example than that. Dune. I thought Dune. Like, I mean, I guess, did Dune 2 come out after Oppenheimer? I don't really remember. Like, yeah, Interstellar. Well, that was like 10 years ago, man. Like 15 years ago. It was a really, really long time ago. Dune is probably the one that I would go with for like the most recent one. Or Oppenheimer is good too, sure.
And was there even one before that?
Unironically, John Wick.
Many of people's favorite movies are the timeless classics. The original Star Wars trilogy, Titanic, Jurassic Park, the original Disney animated films, Lord of the Rings. They were not completely built around what was happening in the year that they were made. They were self-contained creative works with themes, characters, and worlds that could outlive the culture that was surrounding them, because they weren't about the culture that was surrounding them. We don't see nearly as much of that coming from Hollywood anymore, because they have become obsessed with current social norms, internet discourse, and whatever the current cultural conversation is that's happening at that exact moment. The problem is that modern internet culture has now made this even worse, because they pick up and abandon trends within a week or even sometimes days. Anything that's going to be built around culture today is going to have an expiration date, and that expiration date is getting shorter every single year. Now, that doesn't mean that movies and television...
I think that also it's the like, one difference between like movies and video games is that genres of movies, like comedy movies, are still, you know, funny, right? Like, people still want to watch comedy movies. People still want to watch dramas. They still want to watch action movies. So, like, video game genres, like, basically, like, they ebb and flow a lot more than, like, let's say a movie genre does. Yeah, rom-com, comedy is dead. That's for a different reason.
Shows can't still be successful. They absolutely
can. It's not funny.
I think we all can see that. But they benefit from having a much faster turnaround. A movie that begins production in 2020 that releases in 2022 can still feel relatively connected to the culture that produced it.
Sure.
But a video game that begins production in 2020 and releases in 2026 or 2027 can feel like it came from an entirely different planet.
I think also, like, you probably can make a better comparison. Well, I don't think people really give enough credit to how much the, like, woke identity stuff captured discourse and captured media. Like, inside of the years of, I would say, like, 2019 to 2024, that was like everything about media. Everybody was thinking about this. Everybody was talking about this, and you weren't allowed to disagree with it. And so what it did is, like, and I think that really, like, if you compare 2016 versus 2015, let's say, to 2005, I think there was a much smaller difference than 2015 to 2021. Like, I really feel like we went through a very profoundly unique period of time of about 5 years.
I think this is one of the biggest reasons that we have been seeing so many games struggling so much culturally. It's why we are seeing so much backlash over character designs, how stories are written, and the overbearing use of divisive social politics. Many of the games that have been released over the last 2 years began their concept phases and development phases somewhere between 2018 and 2020, and that was a completely different cultural reality. At that time, people were much more willing to tolerate a lot of this stuff here and there. Maybe they just rolled their eyes and moved on, but the reaction usually just ended there. Today,
well, I think that it was more than that. I think it's not that people tolerated it. It's that people were not allowed to express distaste with it. Like, there was a culture of toxic positivity that was enforced by every corporation in the entire world. But not the whole world, but like on the internet, where it's like, if you express distaste with, race swapping characters or gender swapping characters or adding in trans themes to a video game that has nothing to do with sexuality, like, you were just branded as like this awful person, and you would effectively get deplatformed. You would lose sponsorships. You'd maybe get banned on the platform. And so, like, there was a culture of toxic positivity, of never criticizing and never saying anything negative about these viewpoints, right? And I think that fundamentally, when Elon bought Twitter, everything changed, right? And then you could see that actually everybody actually always did hate this, but there was just a culture around not being able to say it. People were being forced into accepting this, and the moment that they were not able to be forced into accepting it, it immediately stopped. That's why every single one of these, like every single website that's unmoderated, tends to have the same viewpoints that we have. That's just generally the way it is. Like, if you don't control what people say, the default will be that people think like us, because that's the way that most things are. So you have to manufacture a separate hyper reality in order for these ideas to have an ecosystem that they can exist in without effectively being cannibalized by better ideas.
Interests, tastes, and culture have changed completely, and more importantly, people have become far more tribal and openly hostile towards anything that's associated with the other side. A few years ago, a game could replace male and female characters with body type A and B and gender swap a character or rewrite an old role, and most people would barely even react. Today,
they weren't allowed to react. I think everybody hated it. And I think that's why there's so much animosity against those people now, is because everybody hated living under that tyranny. And now that you don't have to, people are making up for lost time. Yeah, you weren't able to have those opinions.
Hey, that exact same decision is going to get your trailer downvoted into oblivion, and the game having no audience there to show up when that game actually releases. These studios are not necessarily making games for the culture that exists today. They are releasing games based on culture that they would believe that would still be here
that they
6 or 7 years ago. This is why multiplayer games have honestly probably been hit the hardest. They are far more vulnerable to the changing of trends, and also to trends just changing faster in the industry than they can actually develop around them. And I think this extends far beyond just politics and opinions and tastes and everything else. It's actually affecting the games themselves.
Welcome to High Guard.
Look at the endless trend chasing around battle royales, hero shooters, and extraction games, or the flood of terminally millennial Marvel dialogue. These games were approved at a time where those ideas probably made sense to a lot of people, but then they released years later when people were already tired of them. Just look at the wave of hero shooters that came out in the last 2 years. Almost all of them failed outside of Marvel Rivals, and I think a major reason for that is simply because they took too long to make. By the time that they arrived, taste had already shifted, and the audience had already moved on. Marvel Rivals only succeeded because it didn't follow every trend that the industry was chasing. At least in my eyes, I think it rejected the obsession with safe character designs and leaned way more into making their cast attractive, and that made them feel far more culturally relevant at the time because that's what people actually really wanted in that moment.
I think also, so there's a lot of things so companies pay cosplayers to dress up as their characters. They do. They'll pay cosplayers to do this. Like, they give them money, they pay them to go to events, etc. So why is it that all of these girls are cosplaying, for example, Emma Frost or, I don't know, Black Cat or, one of the other characters, Storm, in these games? The reason why, it's because these characters are hot, they're attractive, they're appealing, and people like them. And so fundamentally, Luna Snow, that was a big one, right? And so fundamentally, people, that's free advertising. If you have people dressing up as your characters and people talking about your character design, that is advertising for your game in a positive way. And if it wasn't advertising for your game in a positive way, you wouldn't have people paying money for it. you wouldn't have these companies spending money to do that.
Also helping it to stand apart from everything else that's coming out of AAA. And I think all of this becomes so much more worse when these companies try to do this inside of existing franchises. When you have your own IP, you're free to do whatever you want. You can build characters, worlds, and an audience around the culture that you're chasing, and people could decide whether they're interested. But when you take something that already existed and you reshape it to trends from 6 years ago, you're forcing ideas onto an audience that already has expectations for what that series is supposed to be. Look at what's going on with the Odyssey right now. This is something that also happens in Hollywood. This is why these changes create so much backlash. This is what's really pissing off a lot of people.
It's because it's a change that's made in a culture of toxic positivity. Everybody knows Helen of Troy wasn't black. So whenever you cast a black person as Helen of Troy, you're making a social statement. You're making a social statement by doing that. And everybody knows it. So, and fundamentally, like, there are a lot of, and the people that try to advocate for this kind of stuff, they think that they can guilt trip you, and it's like, okay, well, I'm going to say that you're racist, so then you have to agree with this. Like, that's really good for manufacturing consent on social media, but it's really bad for getting butts in seats on a movie theater. It is. And I think that's what's happened with a lot of movies. The Odyssey seems like it's doing well, but I would argue that I think it would do a lot better if they didn't make these controversial casting decisions. It would have been even more successful. So fundamentally, I think that they're good at preventing people from, speaking out, but they're not good at preventing people from doing something.
Using the popularity of an older franchise to sell something designed for an audience that they assumed would exist years later.
Yeah.
By the time that game releases, that predicted audience may have disappeared by that point, while the original audience is still sitting there wondering why everything they like has changed to attract people that never even showed up. Now, something that I find really funny, and I think a lot of you guys are probably going to agree with me on this, is that I think a lot of people in the games industry desperately wish that they were Hideo Kojima. I mean, Death Stranding has everything that I have criticized throughout this entire video.
It's exactly what I fucking said. Yes,
it has Hollywood actors, full performance capture, hours of cinematics, expensive production.
But they
even have a bunch of licensed music in it, and they definitely have a director who clearly loves movies and television and sees himself as a director. Kojima puts celebrities into the game just because he wants to meet them. He scans directors into their world as holograms. This man is...
Yeah, Guillermo del Toro, is it? This is like a fucking... The guy made Pan's Labyrinth, right? He was going to do The Hobbit, and he's just like one of the characters in Death Stranding.
Probably the most self-indulgent developer alive, but Kojima understands something that the rest of the industry fundamentally does not. All of this serves an idea that is completely his own. Death Stranding was not an old franchise. It's being rewritten around whatever Hollywood is doing at the time. It was an IP that was distinct. It had its own distinct world. It has bizarre mechanics and an experience that only would work inside of a video game. You spend hours walking across mountains, balancing packages, building infrastructure, and forming connections with people that you may never actually meet. The actors help bring that world to life, but the entire game is not built around just showing off those actors. These studios copy the surface-level parts of Kojima. They hire the recognizable celebrities. They build out these enormous motion capture studios. They create long cinematic scenes.
Yeah. They just forget about making the good video game. Like, that's the, Jesus. We were so close.
They take themselves very,
Damn it, we
very
messed
seriously.
up again.
But they leave out the creative risk, the mechanical experimentation, the willingness to make something that may only appeal to a very specific group of people. They want the prestige without doing the thing that earned him the prestige. And I love Death Stranding, by the way. It's one of my favorite games. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and it's definitely self-indulgent, to say the least. But at the same time, it's a game that offers an experience that you just can't find anywhere else. It does so many weird...
And I think that's a really good point that he's bringing up, is that the experience that you have playing Death Stranding, I don't think that you can have that experience in another video, in a movie or a TV show. Like, you could say, maybe it's similar to like the Book of Eli, or it's similar to, some other post-apocalyptic movie like Walking Dead or something like that. But it's truly a unique experience that is kinetic, and it's an experience that you engage in yourself. So it's not like, okay, well, we're going to create this bullshit and make it like a movie. This is a unique experience that only a video game could deliver. The Long Road? Yeah. I was thinking about that. Yeah, the road with whatever his name is.
Different things. Aragorn. It's so distinct in its world and what it's trying to do, and none of it feels like it has anything to do with current day. Ironically, by trying to be big and cinematic and ultra Hollywood, Kojima, being the guy that he is, actually made something that was timeless and distinct, which kind of loops me back around to Power World in a way, because Power World didn't take 8 years trying to figure out what they were going to be able to make in the current culture that they were making it in. No, they took a timeless concept, iterated on it, and then released it to an audience that they knew would already be there no matter what, regardless of when those guys released that game. And that's why it's so popular. That's why it worked out for them. And that's what I think a lot of these guys have kind of just lost sight of over time. They've gotten so obsessed with Hollywood, so obsessed with trying to make video games into movies, that they forget about what made games timeless. At one point in time, I wanted to make a video where I was going to talk about timeless games and like what makes games timeless in some cases, like an Ocarina of Time or a Metal Gear Solid or Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy X, the original ones. There's a ton. There's a huge list. Super Mario Brothers, right? If you think back to all these games, all the most timeless games, not a single one of them was ever made to have anything to do with what was going on in current day.
I don't think I would completely agree with that. I think that Metal Gear Solid is the exception, but he's right about the rule. I think that Metal Gear Solid very clearly was a critique on, American imperialism, around the military-industrial complex and everything. Like, it clearly was commentary on it. But it was commentary that was being done in a respectful and a reasonable and also with a degree of escapism to it. It was not a one-to-one. There were just characters in there that kind of looked like Dick Cheney. That's a really big difference. Whereas now, I just feel like it's almost always a one-to-one.
It was never about current culture.
Yeah, it wasn't a lesson.
It was a self-contained experience.
They weren't trying to teach you something.
That was made to be not about its culture and just about itself. And that's the one step that these guys completely missed.
Made parallels, not direct comparisons.
Think that,
exactly.
I'll be honest, I don't really care that these guys want to make games look more cinematic. If you want to make games look better, cool, that's fine. If you want to hire Hollywood actors,
cool,
the game
that's
good
fine.
First, the one thing that's crippling these guys the most is the fact that they are stuck in today and they need to be thinking about tomorrow. And that's the thing that's really killing a lot of these games right now.
Yeah,
they got to get out of
Marathon's that.
Because, I mean, as somebody that is just not really a part of the whole film thing, I don't really watch a lot of movies anymore. I really don't watch a whole lot of TV. I know that I'm not alone, and I know there's a lot of other people that are like me. And if these guys continue to follow what Hollywood has been doing and following their trends, they're going to end up meeting a lot more guys like me. I'm gonna tell you that right now. Anyway, I'm tired. I'm gonna get ready to go I gotta go to bed. Cat keeps coming and trying to tell me it's time to go to bed, so I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you guys did like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, comment down below, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Twitch, catch me in the next one. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Let me know if you guys are sick of the Hollywood trends inside of games as well, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. Peace.
No, I mean, I agree with everything he says. I've complained about this for a while. I've said for a very long time that I really, really don't like the trend of turning video games into narrative adventures and movies. And I think that there are a lot of video games that I play that the cinematics interrupt me playing the game. It's almost like I'm trying to play the game, and then the cinematic is like, look at me. Look at me. Ooh. Wow, we're going to have to listen to another lore dump. Uh-oh. It's like, fuck. Do I really want to listen to this shit again? Because The Last of Us, I do think that The Last of Us was the big one. It was. And cinematic acting like an ad, I know. And have you seen the recent Delhi protests in India? I'm going to look at it probably today, or tomorrow, because, I don't know really what happened. I'm just going to look it up ahead of time and see kind of what's even happening, right? 20-minute tutorial doesn't shut the fuck up. Yeah, I also, in video games, one thing I hate are tutorials. And the reason why is because, I just don't feel like I don't learn anything through a traditional tutorial. Thanks for watching, boys. Yeah, there's Legendary Drops in chat. Make sure to give them a follow on Twitch, too. I'll link you guys to video.